When advanced practitioners shift their meditation from isolated retreats to daily life, they often hit a physiological wall. The mind remains calm and detached, observing stress as it arises, but the autonomic nervous system locks into rigid, immovable tension. The Burmese monk Sayadaw U Tejaniya addresses this environment using cittānupassanā, mindfulness of the mind. This acts as a highly efficient top-down metacognitive monitoring system. Rather than forcing attention onto a single object like the breath and actively suppressing distractions, this approach uses open, non-directive awareness to monitor the quality of the observing mind itself. Tejaniya refined this framework while running a textile business, designing it specifically for the high-stakes, chaotic sensory inputs of complex urban environments. But this metacognitive monitoring has a mechanical limit. It can detect a reactive mental attitude, like aversion, but it often cannot downregulate deep, ingrained physiological arousal once the sympathetic nervous system fires. This is where Stephen Procter's Mindfulness in Daily Life, or MIDL, provides the missing mechanism. Procter's GOSS formula acts as a bottom-up somatic subroutine designed explicitly to clear these physical lockups. Achieving continuous mindfulness in everyday life is an architectural problem. It requires both a metacognitive layer to detect the reaction and an autonomic deconditioning layer to release it. This diagram represents the integrated algorithm. On the left, we have the cognitive pathway based on Tejaniya's teachings. On the right, the somatic pathway of MIDL. Together, they form a unified, branching protocol. The left side serves as the overarching operating system. It constantly scans the sensory field, collecting data and checking for reactive mental attitudes. The right side functions as an emergency release valve. It is deployed specifically to clear physical resistance when the cognitive system detects an anomaly it cannot resolve alone. Traditional slow-motion retreat models bypass this process entirely by artificially lowering the allostatic load. They remove the external stressor rather than building a biological system capable of processing it. The goal of this algorithm is seamless execution in real time, operating efficiently inside an active, highly stimulated nervous system. This flowchart provides a precise, step-by-step biological protocol to process complex sensory inputs without accumulating psychological residue. We begin at Node 1, the Tejaniya base state. This diagram illustrates relaxed perseverance, a continuous, open monitoring of all 6 sense stores simultaneously, receiving visual, auditory, and internal inputs without grasping. Within this state, the practitioner runs continuous background diagnostic prompts. They ask, "Am I aware?" to confirm the presence of knowing, and "What is my attitude?" to check for subtle reactivity. Step 2 occurs when a complex external stressor enters the system. The incoming data triggers an immediate sympathetic autonomic response, flooding the chest and jaw with acute tension. Under Tejaniya's framework, this physical anomaly is recognized as a shift in mental attitude, the sudden arising of craving or aversion. When pure cognitive observation fails to self-liberate this tension, the somatic system locks into rigid resistance. If you attempt to maintain open awareness while locked in physiological rigidity, you simply reinforce the feeling of anxiety. You become a highly aware witness to your own panic. This creates a strict conditional trigger. If physiological rigidity traps the mental state, the Tejaniya cognitive loop must be paused. Recognizing the failure of the cognitive loop is a vital metacognitive step. It prevents practitioners from becoming trapped in an endless cycle of anxious observation. To break the cycle, the practitioner triggers the somatic subroutine, bypassing the stalled cognitive loop to interact directly with the nervous system's physical architecture. This animation outlines the first phase of Stephen Procter's MIDL protocol, ground. You must immediately withdraw attention from the conceptual story of the stressor, the internal narrative of why you are angry or anxious. You shift entirely from exteroception to interoception, anchoring awareness deep within the internal visceral sensations of the body. Next, you observe. You scan the physical body to localize the specific points of autonomic resistance, identifying tightness in the forehead, eyes, jaw, chest, and diaphragm. These isolated tension points are the literal, physical manifestations of the cognitive hindrance detected in Step 2. By grounding and observing, you strip the emotional charge from the stressor. You reduce a complex psychological problem into raw, manageable interoceptive data. This cross-section shows the primary physiological intervention: soften. It begins by initiating a slow, deep diaphragmatic inhalation into the lower abdomen, followed by a silent, prolonged nasal sigh to deflate it. The neurobiology of this exhalation is exact. Consciously releasing targeted muscle groups on the outbreath directly stimulates the vagus nerve, increasing parasympathetic activity. You must actively soften 3 specific areas: the micromuscles around the eyes, the hinge of the jaw, and the abdominal wall. Finally, the protocol requires a smile. This can be a subtle physical turning up of the lips or a deliberate mental acknowledgement of the relief that comes from letting go. This step serves a strict functional necessity. It injects a dopamine reward into the brain for releasing tension, deconditioning the defensive neural pathway over time. Step 4 is the system reset. Once the somatic tension dissipates, the GOSS subroutine terminates automatically. Awareness is immediately returned to the Tejaniya-based state, the open, non-directive monitoring of all sense stores. By repeating the soften and smile mechanics, practitioners move beyond temporary relief to a permanent rewiring of the nervous system's default response. This timeline graph demonstrates the algorithm over a 24-hour cycle. Micropulses of the GOSS subroutine actively flatten spikes of sympathetic arousal. This dual-layer approach resolves daily friction. The Tejaniya layer detects defilements, while the middle layer prevents somatic trapping. Over months of repetition, a long-term neuroplastic outcome emerges. The deliberate, manual somatic intervention compresses into an automatic neurological reflex. The momentum of this combined practice yields a state of continuous, low-effort awareness that cleanses itself in real time. This state becomes highly resilient. It maintains baseline stability even amidst the most chaotic and demanding sensory environments. True liberation in daily life requires treating the mind and the autonomic nervous system as a single, unified processing architecture. Advanced contemplation builds an integrated cognitive and somatic engine capable of processing the complexity of the world perfectly, moment to moment.